I heard my name called a dozen times this morning. Not my first name, but the name I got later. Mom. This morning, the 3-year-old wouldn't let me out of his sight. Bathroom, coffee, upstairs for clothes. Each transition marked with the sonar ping of Mom! And why? Why this need? Is it his allergies? Is it a growth spurt when physical step is marked with an emotional regression? Is it because it's something he can remote control? Is it for a sense of power in COVID times? Is it me? He had woken up twice the night before, finally ending nursing in my bed at 4 a.m., as he does every night. By 9 a.m., I could feel the panic building in my lungs. I was drowning. I need space from this person I love so much that I would throw myself into a trash compactor for. For just a moment, I needed to be done. And this is parenthood. I am in service for as long as both sides agree to it. I can't say that I ever spoke the words, I would like to have children, out loud, without ever wondering if this was true or not. Even now, I don't know if there was an actual want or need, and isn't that strange? The notion felt as natural or as unchangeable as my eye color. I've given birth to 3 children, meaning my body has stretched and pushed itself over and made way for another. I've actually done this 4 times, as the first time I was pregnant, I miscarried, making the rest of my kiddos rainbow babies, which is a lovely term, but for something terrible. I've grown and evacuated 3 placentas, thank you. It's like a wet pillow. Don't look it up. 3 times a surgeon has marked a line under my tummy. 3 times from that line, a fresh new human has come out of a very messy and very violent looking portal. 3 times tied to a table. 3 times I cried with joy. 3 times nauseous. 3 times not scared, but scared. Our first kiddo is 7 and sensitive and tired. His emotions are big, as is his ability to make friends. He's smart, he's artistic, he creates these beautiful symmetrical things that move and actually transform. He's funny, he performs, he gets sad, he whines. He loves his friends. Our third kiddo is 3 and strong and flexible. He laughs and plays well with big kids. He craves new sights. He's brave, wandering far from me, physically adept and musically inclined. He dances with his whole body, like this. He likes to race, but will slow down for you so we all win. I'm gonna do the last bit in slow motion. He keeps me close and still nurses, telling me that since we're inside the house, per our agreement, he gets to control how and when he gets mom milk. He loves his brother, and sometimes, when exhausted, will pick on his brother just to see a reaction. We go to bed too late. Our second kiddo was only with us for 6 months. A rare disease beat up his brain while his beautiful body grew. He didn't cry after we got into hospital because of the drugs they were giving him to slow down the disease. He mostly slept. I asked that the nurses hold him, and they did. And our family grew, bonded to these hospitals forever. Even if those nurses move or the doctors change at those places, which is the way of hospitals, our family grew there. Felix, our second one, had thousands of seizures. And each one was terrible, even if we knew it and almost became comfortable with them. And eventually we also grew used to his drops in oxygen, how he wouldn't breathe for so long, and then finally begin again. Until the week our favorite doctor said that he scared her, and it might be close to time. And even he knew so much. If only 6 months, he knew our voices, he knew our smells, our touch, and he knew to wait. We were so lucky for our time with him, and we miss him. And I think about what if he had survived, what our family would be. Our 7-year-old Oscar, 2.5 when Felix died, he knows what to say. How we keep him in our heart. We miss him, we love him. That he is the best big brother, and how he got Felix to scream. The only time he screamed in hospital, that was him. And Leo, the newest, knows baby Felix's name. Knows that he died, even if he doesn't know what that means. Knows that the cemetery is where Felix's marker is, and that we can visit it. And that's strange information for a kid. Have children? I don't know. Do I recommend quarantine with small children? No. No. Is there ever a good time to have children? No. Will it work? I don't know. What does work mean? Will bad things happen? Will you do your best? Will you figure it out? Will you hope to remember these moments when they hold hands, when the leaves are yellow and the sky's blue? Will you remember why you chose these roommates who suck at dishes and changing the cat litter? Will you remember trying to balance your sense of self or attempts at self-care, which, by the way, fuck you? When so much of your life is now built around these people, how your body screams for space, and how you know it's their job to eventually grow up and fly away, but in a good way. I try not to describe myself as a mom, because the patriarchy has fucked that up. I wish there was a different term. I wish I could say Marine, or Walker, or Scout, or Oaken Warrior. Something badass. Something understood to be pressurized and capable. Something that has walked through exhaustion and physical discomfort for the sake of something beyond themselves. Something that chooses to love over and over. Something that remembers to make eye contact even when they want to run away. Something that suits up. Something that grows and shelters things. Something strong. I want a wooden staff. I want a stiff uniform. I want a goddamn cloak. It's too much to fit into only one word, and something no one understands until they walk it for themselves. So, until society acknowledges this, in ways beyond the lip service of a 25-year-old writing copy for commercials, in ways beyond a post beyond social media, or a false holiday commemorating what's impossible for anyone to get, until then, I will be myself, and I will be mom.
This is the closest thing I'm gonna get to a grandchild, isn't it? My father yells, chasing me down in the parking lot of the Canal Park Brewery. He's not talking about the dog. He's just met my friends and my not child for the first time, and things didn't go exactly the way he had planned. You do not have a right to this child, I retort. This wasn't a problem I had expected, but I definitely should have. I had, after all, always been very clear about not wanting kids. My wife and I didn't feel a burning desire to have children, and seeing as how there are probably way too many humans on this planet already, we were on the same page. No kids for us. There was also this theater thing. After graduating from college, it was very clear to me that there was a larger market for what I could do when I applied my mind to technology than when I applied it to words. So I followed my grandfather's path of being an engineer during the day. He was a mechanical engineer, I was a software engineer, and made stories at night. At this point, my theater family involved both my best friend and the love of my life. It consumed us, and we loved it, but it meant I had 2 jobs. Not a lot of time for baseball games and the like. Let me go back. This whole thing started when we came back from our honeymoon in Spain. It was an amazing experience. It was only the second time traveling outside of North America. My wife Liz and I shared so many experiences, including being in Sevilla when Spain won their first FIFA Cup in 40 years, bonfires on the beach at midsummer, and learning of the beach of the birth of our niece Genevieve while walking by ancient Roman ruins in Carmona. We ate tapas, went to Turkish baths, and came back filled with each other and life itself. When we returned, we received an invitation from 2 friends for dinner. "We want to hear about your honeymoon," they said. "We will cook you dinner. We will serve you wine," they said. "Yes," we said. So we went to their duplex in Powderhorn, ate an amazing dinner, drank wine, and told them about the bonfires, the Alhambra, the amazing Teatro Museo Dali in Figueres. And when we were done, they said, "Here's some more wine. Let's relax on the screen porch." And that was when we learned that this night was not about Spain. It wasn't about tapas or beaches or football. It was about a future we all share now, but didn't then. "We want to start a family," they said. "We want you to help us," they said. They told us about how they had thought about finding a donor through an agency, but they didn't want someone anonymous. They wanted someone they knew. They wanted someone who would stay involved with their child, particularly if it was a boy, because neither of them were. We were honored. We were scared. We were excited. We said yes. We wanted to be all on the same page about what this meant for everyone involved. We didn't want to involve a lawyer, but we also didn't want surprises. So we had them over to our apartment this time, and we typed out a document. It detailed things like responsibilities, custody, visitation rights, and tattoos. It said I would be known as Uncle Josh. Birth mom would be Mama, and our other friend, Mom. For most of my life, I had been terrified of impregnating the women in my life. On the way to college, my mother told me to always have a condom on me, just in case. I always did. And when one broke, I remember the trip to Planned Parenthood, the Plan B, my girlfriend's nausea, like it was yesterday. Now, here I was, trying to get a woman pregnant, and well, it wasn't working. It had been several months, many trips, and our friend still wasn't with child. Fertility discussions are hard, but they can be so much harder when it's not with your spouse. Was I going to get voted off the island? Did I need to see a doctor? Had I been living in fear all these years for nothing? Just when my anxiety had reached a peak, I had an answer. My friend was pregnant. There's a story my friend likes to tell. She was now 7 months pregnant and beginning to prepare for life with a child. She had bought a glider chair for nursing from Babies R Us in Burblandia and needed a hand getting the large piece of furniture in and out of the car. We picked her up and headed out to pick up the chair. My wife stayed in the car, and my friend and I headed in. While we were waiting in line for what felt like the capital of heteronormative land, this was 5 years before gay marriage would be legal in Minnesota, she thought to herself, "Everyone here thinks he's the father." She chuckled to herself, if only they knew. And then realized, technically, I was. As the due date approached, I experienced a type of anxiety that I had never felt in my life. It kept going through my head. What if something went wrong? What if the child wasn't healthy? Once again, one thing to go through those challenges with someone you chose for better or for worse. Another, when it's your friend. What if something went wrong? And then it came. It was a boy, a beautiful baby boy. It was a long, hard labor, but everyone was healthy. We were happy. Rounds were made, he was held. I would go over and hold the baby so Mama could get a thing or two done while Mom was at work. Slowly he grew, and our lives very, very slowly became more intertwined. I watched him grow and stayed as involved as I could in helping out. I wasn't the only one either. If it takes a village to raise a child, these mamas had a hell of a village. Some of our very close friends would come over, sometimes as often as weekly, to pitch in and help out as he grew. Mom had a job that involved working nights, and Mama was very good about getting help. Back to that parking lot. That agreement we made had been absolutely clear. My family did not have a right to their child. Our friends had a right to their own family, a family just like anyone else's. Later, on the phone, I more calmly explain our agreement to my dad. I tell him that if he wants a relationship with his family, he has to earn it. It has to be their choice, and they have every right to say no. I told my friends that I would manage it if they wanted. I would tell my parents no. It was awkward. I wanted them to have a family just like everyone else's. They said, no, we can handle it. Eventually, our friends want another child. We start the whole process again. Once again, the baby comes. This time, it is a girl. My parents are regrouped as well, tried again. It is awkward at first, but things proceed in fits and starts. I would come and play with the kids. There'd be pillow fights and hide and seek and at least one or two arguments between the children. We settled into rhythms. We watched them regrow. My parents regrouped as well, tried again. It was awkward at first, but things proceed. And as I watch this family grow, I think about how it is amazing. I think back to that argument in the parking lot. I think about how, in many ways, I was attempting to apply my own heteronormative view of what a family should be to what they should have. And I realized how limiting that was, and marvel at what we have now. Today, it's not mama and mom. It's just two mamas. It's not Uncle Josh. It's just Josh. And my parents are just an extra set of grandparents. The boy is 11, and like both of his birth parents, he loves to write and read. The girl can't wait until she can babysit and wants a puppy. They both love dragons. I love them both. I've always believed you have two families. The one you are born into and the one you choose yourself. I consider these friends family. They are the family that I have chosen. But most importantly, they're the family that chose me. They chose us. And for that, I will always be grateful.
In my junior high school science class, one day we studied overpopulation, and at the beginning of this class, the teacher asked all the students how many children they planned to have when they grew up. And only one student in the entire class said 0, and that student was me. I have never in my life wanted children, not for a second. And I've never had a reason why. The idea has simply never had any appeal to me, none whatsoever. Now, throughout my life, people have taken this as meaning that I do not like children, and this is not true. I, in fact, like children very much. Anything can and will happen, as Jeff Goldblum says of them in Jurassic Park. And if you would like to hear more of my profound life philosophies expressed entirely in Jurassic Park quotes, please see me after the show. I adore children. And another thing I adore is rhinoceroses. And I'm not going to give one of them a room in my house. It's not a fair comparison. The rhinoceros would be easier. I wouldn't feel responsible for its entire psychological structure. Moving on. When I was a younger man, I got a little bit of crap for not wanting children, people angrily demanding to know why not every now and then. And of course, I didn't have an answer for this. I didn't see the need for one then, and I don't see one now. Nobody needs to justify their positions here. If you want to breed, then, meaning no offense, this is probably on some level because you are a living thing, and that's almost our whole deal. I admit that I am an outlier here. But if you don't, well, there's no harm in this. The world has a sufficiency of humans in it. Indeed, a surplus. But I have gotten a bit of pushback. Just a bit, though. Because I'm a dude. If I were a woman, I cannot even imagine. Still in all, this position of mine has gone ahead and messed up my life, and yes, I will tell you how. In 1995, when I was 22 years old, I fell in love with a woman who we'll call, let's say Absalom. And it was not her real name, and it was terrific. We got along like a house on fire, the sex was amazing, we were made for each other. But there was just one problem, and guess what that was? Go on, guess. She had always wanted children. But the thing was, she didn't want them now, and so we decided we would stay together until it became more of an imperative. We were young. It wasn't a good idea. Especially for her. I mean, we spend some time together and then we break it off, and she's lost all that time when she might be looking for a father for her babies, whereas my agenda is sailing along unencumbered. I will defend myself by saying that it was her idea, and that the sex really was good. It took a while for the time to come, about 6 years. But inevitably, it did. Inevitably, she decided that she wanted to have children soon. And so we broke up. It's not much of a story, I'm afraid. It took us about a month between the revelation and the actual break, because we were pretty attached to each other at this point. But we did it without rancor or drama. We never actually argued about the issue. She simply wanted children with no justification or rationalization, same as me from my end, and we respected that in each other. I was heartbroken, of course, and had a very bad couple of months, but was beginning to get over it when, about 8 months after the break, she called me up and told me that she had decided that she didn't want children anymore. She admitted freely that this was a huge thing to lay on me, and of course I couldn't just simply accept this. I thought about it for quite a while. Oddly enough, my father, who is not normally a person I talk to about emotions because he is a robot from space, wound up advising me on the matter in a way that meant something to me. He told me that you never really knew what anyone was really thinking, that you never really knew everything about their motives, and so you just had to decide whether you trusted them or not. And I did trust Absalom. It took more thought, more soul searching, but eventually I accepted what she told me, and we got back together. Without the specter of childbearing over us now, soon we were living together, and soon we were married. In 2009, Absalom was accepted to grad school in New Jersey, so we picked up our home in Minnesota and moved out there. And then she was in grad school, and I've never been in grad school myself, but I know quite a number of people who have. And from outside observation, it appears to me that grad school programs have a device that measures human misery, and once you have experienced enough of it, they give you a diploma. For my part, I got a job in New York. And to me, New York is hell. And by hell, I don't mean that it's a tough town. I mean that if the Bible is true and I continue to reject it, I will return to New York when I die. What I mean to say is, we both entered into a very bad part of our lives. And unfortunately, we were not there for each other. We had been slowly growing apart for some time, and things grew bad between us. We entered marriage counseling every week for 9 months. 9 months we gestated our divorce, perhaps ironically. And every week the counselor asked us if we had done the work we'd agreed upon the previous week, and every week we agreed that I had, and every week we agreed that she had not. Which was, of course, the most heartbreaking part. Still, it wasn't the coup de grace. The coup de grace came at the end of the 9 months when she announced that she wanted children again. And that, as it were, was that. We knew what that meant. To this day, I don't know if this announcement was entirely honest or whether it was just her doomsday device, the thing she could do to finally kill it. Doesn't really matter. Obviously, I didn't trust her anymore, which will teach me to listen to my dad. And that is how not wanting children messed up my life. If it makes you feel any better, this was almost 9 years ago now, and the life I've led since then has, I can say with perfect clarity, been the best period of my life. My friends, my job, my creative career, everything. I've thought about the road I didn't take from time to time, but not much, and never with real sorrow. I've been lucky. I knew what I wanted. I always knew what I wanted, or rather, what I didn't want, and I stuck to it. I lost everything in sticking to it, and it all worked out for the best in the end. And I very much hope the same for anyone, and their desire for no children, or their desire for children, or their desire for rhinoceroses.
It's weird being pregnant during a pandemic. This is not the first time a major personal milestone of mine has occurred during a global disaster, but graduating into the 2008 recession, while terrible for my career and my finances, is not quite the same thing as expecting a child when I'm cut off from 98% of my social network. I won't get a baby shower, and it seems like such a shallow thing to complain about, with sickness and death and fear all around. What is a baby shower? And it's not about stuff, okay? This is the first child in my generation, and kiddo's gonna be spoiled, but the thing is, I don't have a partner. I am a single parent by choice. So I suppose I looked at the baby shower as a replacement for the wedding I don't anticipate having. A day to be focused on me with the people I love joining in my joy. Because I didn't think I'd get this. For years it seemed impossible. I was working terrible temp jobs all day and directing theater evenings and weekends. My aunt had adopted alone, but she made enough money to pay for a live-in nanny, and that wasn't going to be an option for me. I considered going the traditional route, find a partner, have 2 incomes, provide stability. And I tried dating, off and on, mostly off. But honestly, it's miserable. I have shitty taste in men. My interest in women is a pretty recent realization. And plus, look, I'm a romantic, and I don't want to settle. And the love I want, I don't even know if it's possible, and it's probably not healthy. So I kind of stopped seriously looking when I was around 24. I've got stories, so many stories. That's a whole nother show, but there was the borderline sociopath who used to try and get me angry enough to hit him. The one date with the pathological liar who tried to convince me he was a helicopter pilot. And just the series of sweet and intensely dull men. And of course, all the ones who didn't want children. And I wasn't about to assume they would change their minds. So, I just started focusing on me and creating the life I wanted for myself. And honestly, I'm happy being unpartnered. Yet I knew, deep in my bones, that I would regret not being a mother. I got a new job, running a theater, which of course didn't pay terribly well, but it was really flexible, and suddenly I thought, maybe. It took several years to maneuver myself into a position where having a baby was even remotely possible, but I got there, pre-COVID. Still, being financially stable, it's not just going to magically make a baby appear.
Sperm.
I needed some. A remarkable number of people suggested just going out and sleeping with people. which, you know, I could see the appeal of. It's much cheaper. But it didn't gel with my pro-choice core. Like, I couldn't take that choice away from someone. And what do you tell your child when they get old enough to ask? I asked some of my close male friends, focusing on the homosexual ones, thinking that would be simpler. And while everyone was very kind and not too weirded out, they're all kind of used to it at this point, no one was comfortable with the idea. So I moved on to a fertility clinic and purchasing sperm. Shopping for sperm is a legit surreal experience. It's all online and it's set up a lot like a dating site. There are no names, just numbers. And the descriptions are written by the staff, and it's all donor 1, 2, 3, 4 is a good-looking man with a full head of wavy hair, a defined jawline, and arched eyebrows. His dark brown eyes pop from his sun-kissed complexion. I took that straight from the site. So I found one I liked. I paid a lot of money for it, and I waited for the ovulation test to give me the smiley face. It literally, it's an empty circle if you're not ovulating, and a smiley face if you are. The first time, my mom came with me because she wanted to be able to tell her grandchild that she had been there at their conception, and I thought this was hilarious. While waiting the long 2 weeks to take the pregnancy test, I kept thinking how odd it was to be trying for a baby with someone I didn't know, would never know. I had his medical history and his SAT scores and his essay about his childhood dog, but I didn't know his name. Odd or not, it didn't work. And neither did the next 2 attempts. And suddenly, my credit card is pretty much maxed out, and I need to reassess. On something of a whim, I asked a dear friend, who I knew was not going to have children with her husband. I asked her if she would be okay with me asking her husband to be my donor. And she rather liked the idea of being an aunt, so I approached him. He's also a close friend, but it really seemed appropriate to ask the woman first. It all moved rather fast after that. You know, we had several conversations, and they thought about it, you know. And then I went and found a lawyer. We signed the contract just as the pandemic was starting. We sat on opposite ends of a 10-foot table in the lawyer's office, and we legally agreed on this madcap plan. And it only took 2 tries. The difference 12 hours makes in the fertility cycle is not to be scoffed at. Now, because it is such a time-sensitive thing, for the second attempt, I had to leave a video call I was in to go get pregnant. My friend had come to my house and did his thing in the downstairs bathroom. After he'd finished and left with a wave, I mean, no hug because 1, COVID, and 2, awkward. I left my call. I grabbed the cup he had left me. I took my plastic syringe. Okay, the first time I used this little like science pipette thinking, oh, turkey baster joke, right? Yeah. No, don't do that, it's terrible. There's so much air in there and it just, and the noises, and I don't think anything got where it was supposed to go. So if you're gonna do this, get the little needleless syringes like you use for liquid cold medicine, I promise. You'll be much happier. So I suck it up and I shove it up in there and I lay on my back with my legs in the air for 10 minutes. And then I go back to my call. Which, being full of friends, knew exactly why I had wandered off for the last 10 minutes. It's weird being pregnant during a pandemic. I can share my joy at this news with my people, but I don't get the hugs I crave. When my baby arrives in March, I have no idea how many people will be able to meet them. I have my parents next door, you know, part of my multi-year plan to become a single mother. So I'm not going to be alone, but it's hard knowing I won't be able to share those first however many months with my circle. I've made a point of talking about my process. Whenever anyone wants to know, I don't get embarrassed easily, and I think it's important to normalize alternate life choices. Quite possibly I talk too much about some of these things, but I don't intend on stopping. Show the slightest interest, and I will tell you anything you want to know about single parenthood or the frankly bizarre things my body is doing these days. It's weird being pregnant.
I had 2 children that died. No, they didn't get hit by a car. No, they didn't have leukemia or suffer in a house fire because someone left the stove on. I terminated them. I've had 2 abortions. I'm one of those walking contradictions, you know? One of those freaks that thinks somehow, yes, if I'm being totally honest with myself, that they were lives. Perhaps not thinking lives, maybe just tissue, but living tissue that feels and in some way hurts. Certainly it dies. Now, by terminating that tissue, will it regret all of the things it could have done? No, but it could have done them all the same. Children are potential adults. They are adults in the future. By that proxy, the tissue is a child-to-be whose possibility I destroyed, whose potential I killed. So I had 2 children that died, and I murdered them. Now, I will make the argument a child should be wanted. A child should be created to be put in a loved and nurturing environment. And given the 2 fathers and the situations surrounding the pregnancies, that's probably not what they would have gotten. And I know that I would have felt trapped, and think of all the amazing things I've done since then. I would have lost out on all of that. But the argument is often made, that's my problem, right? I should pay the piper. Unless it's truly unwanted, as in the case of incest or rape or such, where the child would truly horrify the mother, perhaps to the point where she is unable to love the child. Would I not have been able to love my children? I somehow can't buy that that's the case, or maybe I can, and that's what I'm afraid of. That I won't be able to love any child, even the one I have now. Mostly I just feel guilty. Well, I alternate between feeling guilty and wanting to let myself grieve. I am sorry that they are dead, and I feel the loss. Sometimes I will see a kid that could be the right age, and... Tonight I went and saw a production of Rabbit Hole, a play about a couple that loses their son in a horrible accident. And even as I cried, I found myself suddenly jealous of them, that they could just grieve right out there in the open. A stranger asked me while I was getting my coat on, "Something wrong, dear?" And I held back from saying, "Well, I'd tell you, but I don't really know if you're pro-life or not." My dear friend told me she was pregnant a few months ago by giving me a present. She didn't explain why she was giving it to me, but when I opened it, I saw it was a book with little mirrors inside in which to imitate wild animals. On the cover, she wrote, "Auntie Ariel, will you teach me how to make faces?" I shit you not, I stared at this book blankly, racking my brain as to why the fuck she gave it to me. I'm pretty sure I simply just set it down and went on talking to her like it didn't matter. I might have muttered, thank you. After a few minutes, I noticed she stopped talking and was just staring at me, looking exasperated and more than a little annoyed. "What?" I asked. "Ariel?" She looked at the book. "Ariel?" Dear God, I was missing something. Something really important. "I'm fucking pregnant? Oh shit." I spluttered an apology mingled with congratulations as I desperately searched for why I had missed this. First off, if I didn't come up with something, she would probably kick my ass. But secondly, what the hell was wrong with me? But then I knew. I looked at her firmly but gently and said, "God, I'm sorry. In my life, pregnancy wasn't an exciting secret and a reason to buy baby books." Thankfully, this was a good friend and an old friend. She got it too and understood. Then on the flip side, there are women who get this shit right away. Like the most recent time I found out I was pregnant before my current daughter was born, I called a friend who, after listening to me do nothing but cry for a minute, I might have gotten out, hi, before I burst into tears, said, oh, fuck, honey, you're pregnant, aren't you? Oh, I'm so sorry. I get furious when people talk about women using it as birth control, that we just walk out of there right as rain. There are days when I cry over something stupid, and days I whisper apologies even though I don't believe in heaven or believe in God. There are days when I'm furious with myself, and days I know I could have figured out a way to make it work. I want to apologize to the fathers, to all the potential would-have-been fathers out there that were given little or no control, or weren't even told at all. I again know the argument that it's our bodies, but these are your children too. I hate myself for asking the first father for money, and as a result, he insisted on coming with me. I should never have made him go through that. I think, given a choice to do it over, I would rather not have told him and ate the guilt all on my own. With him never having to spend nights wondering what his kid would have looked like, I'm afraid that sometimes he does, and that makes me miserable. I know that since it happened, I don't look at the men the same. Even if we are still friends, something is different, and I can't find a way to apologize without saying it was wrong, and if I say it was wrong, I will really hate myself. I have to forgive myself, not only to survive, but to really freely love the daughter I have now. I am standing here now trying to think of a way to end this, something to sum up and put away the sadness so I don't have to think about it. But tonight, the mother in the play who lost her son asked her mother, who'd also lost a son, if it ever goes away. And the answer was the truth. No, honey, it doesn't. You carry it around like a brick in your pocket.
A few weeks ago, while watching Last Week Tonight on HBO, I came to the shocking realization that I am older than the show's host, comedian John Oliver. This guy, right here. Now, one of the reasons that this took me back is that dear sweet John is not really aging that well for a 43-year-old man, and I, on the other hand, kind of am. Now, John gets to have his own talk show on a major cable network, but I get to be a baby-faced Adonis, so I win. So why is it that I look so gosh darn youthful and John looks like he's auditioning for Gargamel in the next live-action Smurfs movie? I mean, it might be because I don't smoke, or maybe it's because I don't drink very much. It could be because the adage, black don't crack, is actually true. But it might also be because I, Duck Washington, am, to the best of my knowledge at this point in my life, child-free. Now, I've seen a lot of my friends start to settle down and start families, and I haven't been able to help but observe that them having children seems to correlate a lot with them looking a little bit more haggard and run down. Like the life force is somehow being sucked right out of them. Now, it's possible that this is just a coincidence, but I think you and I both know that it's not. And for that reason, John Oliver becomes the first con point on my list of whether or not me and my wife should start to hatch our own little ducklings. Now, as pretty as I may be, I eat way too many cheese curds for my personal beauty to play a major role in my life decisions. So let's get some other points up on this board. Point number 2. I'm really lucky to have parents that I actually like spending time with. And they used to come up to Minnesota to visit me every chance that they could. But ever since my brother became a breeder, I've been competing with my adorable little nieces for my parents' time and affection. And as much as it pains me, I'm gonna lose the battle to those grandparent-hogging young ladies every time. And I get it, they're grandkids. They cast a spell on grandparents. I don't even know if they can help it. But maybe if I had some babies, I could tempt my parents away with even younger, cuter grandkids, and then maybe I would see them more often. Parents, that to me is a point in the pros column. Now, manipulating my parents seems like a really flimsy reason to start making babies, so what else do we got? Well, there's my medical history. I am a type 2 diabetic with asthma, and I won't go into her whole medical history, but I will say that my wife Carla has an allergy to the cold. That is a real thing. And so maybe we might help out future generations by not putting all of this back into the gene pool. But then again, we could adopt. I actually find the idea of adopting to be pretty cool, and I know Carla does as well. I mean, she has 2 brothers who were adopted. I just recently learned that I have a sister that I didn't know about who was adopted. I think adoption is a wonderful opportunity for those who are willing to do it. Let's put adoption in the pros column. What else? I have to confess that I worry about the idea of getting old without having kids. I'm not so worried about passing down a legacy, but I'm starting to see that others my age, people younger than me even, are making the shift from being the kid in their relationship with their parents to being their parents' caregivers. Now, I am a black man in America with type 2 diabetes, so I've probably already outlived my life expectancy, but there is a chance that I could grow up to be old and alone. In all honesty, I'd probably be the youngest, sexiest looking resident in the nursing home, but my wife could grow up to be old and alone. I mean, what do I do when my big actor's pension runs out? I mean, this is a serious concern. It's a legit reason to have kids. But it also seems selfish and unfair. I mean, if assuaging my fears is the main reason I decided to have kids, I think it would fill me with a tremendous amount of guilt. I mean, if I have kids, I want it to be because of what I can give them or what they can give the world, not because of what they can give me. Another pro is that I genuinely like kids. I mean, to be honest, babies scare me if I'm being real about it, but I do genuinely like kids, and I think I'm pretty good with kids. Kids tend to like me, and what's not to like? I'm weird, I wear a bunch of costumes, I know a bunch of games, I have a house full of swords. I mean, what kid is not gonna love all that? I always imagined that I would have kids. I spent time during my childhood thinking about what my eventual family would look like. I even thought about what their potential names might be. Xavier, because Xavier was my name in high school French class, and also because Xavier was the head of the X-Men, and I'm a huge comic book nerd. And then Genevieve, after my great-grandmother. Now she was a single mom. She owned a credit bureau and was the first woman licensed to sell real estate in Traverse City, Michigan. I mean, she was pretty freaking cool. Maybe my unhatched chicks would end up being just as cool as Genevieve was, becoming pioneers or trailblazers. Maybe they would fight world hunger or create vaccines in situations just like the one we're in right now. Then again, they just might grow up to be bitter, shitty assholes. Now, you might say, why would they grow up to be bitter and shitty assholes, Duck? You already told us that you like and do well with kids, so they'd probably grow up to be great. But I think that there's a lot more to being a parent than just being good with kids. I feel like in order to be a good parent, let alone a great parent, it takes a lot of sacrifice. And a lot of change, and I think that I personally would have to make a lot of sacrifices. Between my day job at the university, working in a youth program, ironically enough, and my nights freelancing as a director, actor, audio designer, producer, improviser, and playwright, I think I spend between 60 and 80 hours of work a week. I work hard, but I'm happy working hard. I'm actually pretty well content in my life, and I think that's kind of a rarity. It's not that my life doesn't have its challenges, but I think that I've managed to find a way to get through my weeks without feeling like the world is barreling down on me. Are kids really worth messing all of that up? I mean, there's no way I feel like I can put in 60 to 80 hours of work a week and be the kind of parent that I would want to be. And I'd also hate to push off the care of our children onto my wife, as I think that I would be the primary driver in our decision to have kids. So I have to ask myself, if kids are worth giving up everything I currently have, do I risk the world of happiness that I've built for myself? Would the act of doing that fill me with resentment? And this is the biggest thing that's kept me from having kids so far. I'm not ready to give up everything that I have. And I feel like those kids, Xavier and Genevieve, they would deserve everything that I have. Now, when I wasn't just young looking, but was indeed actually young, I once told myself that I didn't want to be an old dad, and that if I was going to have kids, I wanted them to be born by the time I was 40. 40 was almost 4 years ago now. I mean, I still haven't given up entirely on the idea of having kids or adopting, but the idea of it as a reality seems to fade more and more with every passing day. I still wonder if they're out there, the hypothetical Xavier and Genevieve, eating their cereal, learning how to spell, wondering if I'm ever going to come to adopt them. I hope that if I ever do find the courage to upend my life, they will forgive me for waiting so long.